Aibovan, Vanakkam, Mama Kachak Hondamai as we greet you at Thema collection. We are delighted to have you with us today for the inaugural session of Thema Talks Season 2. A year ago, we at Thema Collection started this Thema Talks journey to bring experts, industry leaders, and stakeholders together in one platform to share insights, experiences, and innovative solutions for a sustainable future. In this session, we are excited to hold our first hybrid session combining the best of both in-person and online audiences. Today's session is being held in collaboration with the Barn House Sherwood by the Barn and the Control Union Sri Lanka. In the spirit of sustainability, this event has been organized minimizing carbon emissions through the use of natural lighting, renewable energy, locally sourced plant-based foods, and recycled materials. In addition, we have taken measures to conduct this session without the usage of single-use plastics. Today, our topic going to be low-carbon strategies for Sri Lanka's hospitality industry. As you know, over the past few decades, Sri Lanka's tourism has suffered a lot due to Easter attacks, COVID-19 pandemic, and even the economic crisis. But recently, it has taken a huge turn to the good side, to the betterment of tourism. With that, the emphasis on calculating the carbon footprint has become a great tide in this regard. So, with that, we would like to identify the gap between the stakeholders in Sri Lanka about the importance of these certifications and how they actually work. So we will discuss more on how we could reduce the carbon emissions in the hospitality industry certification and sharing our success stories. Together, we believe that we can support a low-carbon future for Sri Lanka's hospitality industry with insights from our esteemed panelists. Let me introduce the panelists for today. To my right, first, the Deputy Director General of the Sri Lanka Tourism Development Authority, Mr. Upali Ratnayaka. Next, to my left, we have Mr. Chintana Dumiduheva, Lead Trainer, Global Sustainable Tourism Council, Country Coordinator and Global Sustainable Tourism Expert, Green Destinations. And also to my left, we have Mr. Roshan Ranawaka, Managing Director of Control Union, Sri Lanka. And next, we have Mr. Maxim Vikramasinghe, Director of Marketing and Business Development at Thema Collection. And our final panelist for today is Mr. Samira Palyaguruge, the Resort Manager at the Barn House, Sri Lanka and Sherwood by Barn. We are really pleased to have all of you, sirs. To kickstart today's session, I'd like to invite Mr. Upali Ratnayaka to provide an overview of the Sri Lanka's Tourism Development Authority's efforts towards implementing low-carbon strategies in the hospitality industry. Over to you, sir.
Aibovan, thank you very much for organizing this kind of an event where the initiative is taken to a different dimension. On the government perspective, actually, the low carbon emission, we start with the national policy. Recently, we all know tourism national policy was formulated and announced, in which there are two policy statements giving the provisions for this kind of initiatives, and also it's all tourism activities in the country in the future going to be heading toward the sustainable development goal achievement, which is part and parcel of this very subject we are meeting here today. Go beyond, for those who practice sustainability, we also have the certification schemes, where the accommodation sector a few years before we have started, and also in last year we have started the SME sector, which is about 65% of the tourism service providers in the country, for them to start with sustainable practices, which is part and parcel of the reducing the carbon emission, and also the silently adopting them into the climate change, as an adaptation from the tourism sector. So with that, we in the policy wise as well as strategy wise as well as practical in operation wise, we have taken some initiative. This is a start only, but in future, looking at like what developed countries are doing, the whole accommodation sector, we are going to take it to the phase of sustainability, and then supplementary accommodation, which is we call it non-graded accommodation, also will have a different category. And also we are planning to have all other trades such as tour operators and other services also getting into the picture through the sustainable certification. And SME sector, what we have started with the help of UNDP, will continue as a major sector in the country. So likewise, as a national organization, Sri Lanka Tourism Development Authority, along with the Tourism Ministry, joint hand with the organization like Green Destination and even the Control Union, we are working working toward sustainability initiative, where it is a new lessons as well as new experience to us. But of course, our objective is to have more and more carbon, the emission control, and finally, we want to see a sustainable destination in the country. For that initiative, also first destination, we are working Sigiriya, and with those examples or other initiatives, will be able to take toward the sustainability, where part and partial this carbon emission will be a kind of a elements in that. So likewise, the government sector or other government side, it is ready to get the support of the private sector, and the government as a government organization, all the opening and also the direction, even with some incentive schemes we are planning to come up in the future.
Thank you very much for your insights, Mr. Ratnayaka. Next, I would like to hear from Mr. Chintana Dumindu Heva. As someone who bridges theory and practice, how do you interpret the work done by the Global Sustainable Tourism Council in advancing low-carbon strategies for Sri Lanka's tourism industry?
Thank you. Thank you. Sorry. I would like to thanks everyone, the collaborator who arranged this really great event, first of all, and Barn House, and also the Control Union, and also the Thema collection. Ashan taking much more effort to success that. So thank you so much, everyone. So this is really great event you arranged. And when we're talking about the global perspective, how we really address, and also we can be like representing the global arena and like global standards is really matter when we're talking about the tourism, because our clientele is mostly, we are focusing the global clients. So we need to kind of language to look at or like communicate with them with that global language and also the global standards. So in that sense, the Global Sustainable Tourism Council is providing you to kind of the pathway, the plan or regulations kind of criteria, how to align your process or kind of your practices more sustainable way. So that is, if you follow the criteria, is open for everyone. So we have criteria for the accommodation and also the tour operators and also the destination. So in this year, we implement and also we publish the MICE criteria. So that's criteria you can just freely available on internet, and you can get to know and familiar, and what is the kind of part you can practice and you can align with these criteria to match with the global standard. So that's the most important lesson we need to focus on. So that's all criteria really align with the global goals, like when we say the Paris Agreement and also Glasgow Declaration for Tourism. So all these global goals is line up with these criteria. So then when you follow, the businesses is following the Sustainable Tourism Council's criteria, so then they will really align with the global context and also global standards. So in that way, any organizations can just start up with very small way and just move forward it. So there's a much more lessons to focus on that. Because if we really focus in to global tourists to come and also experience, we need to align with that. And also, there's some more regulation is coming up from EU Parliament and also European countries. So how we really need to be the focus on standards. So we'll next session I'll talk about that, how the greenwashing and also what the challenges for that. So if we really focusing on that level, we need to focus, and also all the activities we need to align with this low carbon and also sustainable strategies. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dumindu Heva, for your valuable thoughts. I would like to say that we have a diverse panel today, because we have one person representing the government body, and then we have people representing certification bodies, and we have practitioners who are actually practicing these kind of things in their tourism careers. So now let's turn to Mr. Maxim Vikramasinghe. With your experience in marketing and business development at a sustainable development hotel chain as a practitioner, could you share your insights on what Thema Collection is doing to achieve low carbon strategies in Sri Lanka's hospitality industry?
Thank you, Hasanga. Firstly, I want to thank all the partners who are here with us, especially Samira and Kushanta for this wonderful setup and all the help you all have done getting this event off the ground. So I think, at Thema, we really like to create different, unique, experiential hotels where everyone has its own story, its own concept. And, there are quite a few things that we actually do, and it's, we believe often that, with all our hotels, there isn't one necessary recipe that will fit all in terms of sustainability, because they all have different locations, challenges, and totally different ideas and concepts about them. But, I think one way we really try to look at it is we try to look at in different phases. I think the first phase is the conception phase, where it's very important to build sustainably, and this is something I think we have also learned. I think we're quite lucky that each project that comes out, we've probably learned from the last one, the mistakes and what we can rectify, things we can do. I think of the new projects, we've worked a lot on solar and in terms of design, trying to getting in all the natural airflow. But it's also, I think very important to, think about sustainability in the conception phase, because, there's a lot of things that you really have to look at. And I think now we are also, starting to look at the type of emissions that we have in terms of our building methods. I think more and more we are moving to, tents and different types of unique experiences when we are building, which is low impact and also can be a bit faster in terms of construction. Then I would say it's once your hotel is built, we really have to look at, and we really look at how we can, make the hotel quite sustainable with the policies and what we use. So currently, we are looking at all the ways our sourcing, especially in terms of carbon emissions, trying to get as much as we can from the area. This is always sometimes a bit of a challenge, changing, the perception of, the purchasing managers, even the chefs to, get working with more local based, meat suppliers rather than, the big national suppliers or international suppliers. We also, of course, been working on reducing our single-use plastics. I think right after COVID, we finally managed to get rid of plastic water bottles, get rid of our single-use toiletries. But, it's very hard to, I guess, talk about all the policies because each one, we believe, needs to have a very different policy in its conception. But I think what we're trying to do right now at Thema is to actually really understand what our carbon emissions are. And, with the MDF that partnered with us, we signed with them to do the calculations, or they helped us to do the calculations of all our hotels. We still haven't got them certified, but we're very excited to really understand what exactly we can do to reduce our emissions with the hotels. So, I mean, there's, of course, a lot of... At Thema, we like to do, I think, small projects that have a quite big impact. But I think now is the time we start thinking that, yes, if we are to reduce our carbon, there are certain steps we need to do, save up for solar and, go for more renewable energies. And these do have a bit of a cost. So it's basically helping us think a bit long term. But I think something quite interesting also that we found that when we did our carbon calculations is that the hotels we actually thought would have the lowest carbon or the highest carbon actually had quite low carbon, because it's very important to understand. So a hotel like Alia, it's quite a vast 96-room hotel, high energy consumption. But what we saw is that actually, because of the way it has been designed, and also because of its high occupancies, and there are certain costs that are somewhat fixed. So if you have a lot of rooms, you actually spread it out. So those were the quite interesting insights actually that we gained when we were doing our calculations, and that really goes to show that, it's important to really do this and start looking at certain things like carbon calculations to really understand where exactly you can impact in terms of your hotel. And, there's so many things. I was having a conversation with one of our travel agents the other day, and they were telling me an email sent has this much of carbon as well, because of all the servers and everything that's done. So yes, we might be moving out of paper, but sometimes, the paper might have less carbon than the servers and everything that we use to store it. So it's I think there's no gold mark. I think all you can do is try and see what you can do. And that's very much our philosophy at Thema, to really understand and then do small steps. And then, of course, there'll have to be larger steps that we're planning on taking as well in terms of energy reduction and renewable energies as well in the future. Thank you.
All right. Moving on, I'd like to bring in Mr. Roshan Ranawaka. As a representative of Control Union Sri Lanka, could you share your thoughts on the role your organization plays in promoting low-carbon strategies in the hospitality industry?
Sure. Thanks, actually. Thank you very much for as you said, it's a very nice gathering. So it's a representation of the public sector, scheme owners, certification bodies, and practitioners. I think it's it covers, it closes the loop. So if I talk about the role of us as a certification body, let me give a little brief about Control Union. Probably to the hospitality sector, we are not yet very well known, whereas we are very dominant in other areas. So as a third-party certification body, we are from the Netherlands, a company, 100-year-old company from the Netherlands. We present in the country for about last 25 years, mainly providing our services towards exporters. Why was? Because the needs of standards were more demanded outside the country than inside. So therefore, initially, even though we didn't have intention to solely confine ourselves only to export orientation, but of course, with the demand. So mostly the food sector and the apparel sector and the food processing sector that we are dominantly working with. So they all wanted to have their showcasing of their compliance. to the external markets. But whereas when it comes to hospitality, so it's the other way around actually. So it's basically the demand has to be created here. Of course, as Chintana said, we would be looking at global travelers, a lot of global arrivals. So how to entertain that? So as a third party, what we play in this ground actually on top of our major primary objective is to be the impartial body to make the judgment whether the compliance levels are being met or not. But on the other hand, being a company in the country for last 25 years, and actually even though it's a Dutch company, if you come to our office, you will see we are all locals. So it's one of the primary principles of tourism standards, the local sourcing. I think we are there. So being actually we all are locals, we also would like to bring our the knowledge and expertise onto the table. This is one of the events that we also see that wherever we can engage without basically compromising our impartiality and the independency, we would definitely like to engage with the companies like Thema. We are not only trying to, so Thema is basically the what I see the event today is also more than talking about Thema, it's about bringing in a new concept to the industry so that as a tourist destination, we set the pitch. So the same with Mr. Upali also, we have been discussing several times. How can we bring in the values with our international recognition into the sector so that the valuable efforts done by practitioners can be showcased with a third-party assurance. So if I conclude it, that I think that would be our role.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ranawaka. As you said, this is not just a concept about a single person or a single organization. It's about the impact we made on this earth. So next, since we are at one of the most sustainable venues in Sri Lanka, I'd like to ask Mr. Samira Palliaguruge about the initiatives undertaken by the Barn House and Sherwood by the Barn to achieve low carbon strategies.
Thank you very much. So first of all, I would like to thank everybody to participate on this event. And let me start from the initiative which the Barn House has taken towards the low carbon strategies in Sri Lanka. I'll start from the Barn House itself. So back in 2018, when we started the Barn House, that was the groundbreaking thing. So we were building this whole venue using the one-time use pallet material. So it was the first event venue, or rather resort, to be built from the upcycle material. It was the first initiative, and with the time we always thought of, like, going towards sustainability and the low impact on the environment, and those are in our core philosophy. And by 2022, we were thinking of, like, go ahead with something, a new venture, and then we come up with, I think, idea of having an event venue to reduce the energy usage. And so we came up with the idea. So normally what we do is, like, we brainstorm. And when we brainstorm, we have different sectors coming in. For example, so we some people are from different industries. So we talk with them, and then we come up with the idea. So how, if we're gonna build this event venue without using the electricity for lighting and the air conditioning, so how it would be. And it was a challenging part. So then we come up with the ideas, and we got our designers to come up with some ideas. And it was a challenging part. Then what we did in Sherwood by the Barn, we try to reduce our emission from the electricity and from the from the building material itself and everything. So we reduce our emission through energy using how you call the natural lighting and the natural airflow. And also, if you see these trees everywhere, like you might have seen a little pipe goes up to the tree. And we were thinking how in a day to reduce the temperature down. And then it was amazing, like we were looking at the greenhouses. And then we see that they have the sprinkler system working those greenhouses. And we realized, like, you know, in the greenhouses, they use these sprinklers to watering the plants. But in here, if you use that, what's going to happen is, like, the people sitting under will be like soaking wet kind of thing. And then we thought of, like, you know, spoken to the people, and we try to reduce the downfall of the water level. And then with the using of motors and kind of thing, we reduce that. So and when it this is when it comes to the energy usage. And then what we realized was there's another effect from the supply chain always, and from the vendors itself. And when it comes to the event industry, you're not talking about the venue itself, but there are a lot of vendors working with you. And what we did was, like, we tried to get them to think differently. So we came up with the idea to use, like, recycle items for their decoration. Sometimes reduce the light they're using in the events. Most of the time, people would come and say, I need, like, a lot of lights in here. And we go and say, like, you know, when you come to this place, come in the evening, look at the place, and see whether you're going to need more lights or not. So it's a change that you have to bring from your own, as well as, like, you have to get the other people think in the same way. So that was a few initiatives that we have taken. And also we thought of, like, you know, creating the policies for ourselves, like towards the supply chain, towards energy usage and environment. We are creating policies to make sure, like, in the future, whenever we do something, so we gonna adapt those policies and, like, you know, reduce the carbon footprint emitted by us. So that was our strategy. Thank you.
All right. Mr. Palyaguruge, you also mentioned that you have faced numerous challenges when it comes to the practice of these kind of initiatives. So I would like to ask, what are the challenges you faced, and how did you overcome those challenges?
Yeah, it was really challenging for us to come up with this kind of idea, like this kind of venue, especially when it comes to the sustainable or, like, you know, carbon neutral event venue. So the first thing was, like, you know, educate the customers. Like, if you don't see a need for them, for example, most of the time when a person comes to our place, they would like to have a budget. So when you do this kind of thing, like, you have to make sure, like, you know, your budget would not be exceeded because of these our practices, so people won't move toward us. So what we try to do is, like, you know, work within the budget of their limitations and then offer them. And then there's another part, you have to have a solid story about it. So whenever you come up with the idea and you say, like, you know, you have this low emission and you use natural airflow for your event venue, but it's not convincing. So you have to convince them, showing them what you have done, and then you have to make sure that they get the right picture, otherwise they won't come to this place. And then the other thing is, like, you have to work with the suppliers. You have to tell them, you have to educate them. They won't come along with you. But we realize like every long journey starts with a step, one or two steps. So we are put up that step first, and we're hoping that the world revolve around it and change their perception towards the event industry.
Thank you very much for your valuable thoughts and insights you provided us today. If I ask the same question from Mr. Vikramasinghe, what are the challenges you face in Thema collection when practicing these kind of initiatives, and how do you overcome these challenges?
Thank you. I think, for us, it's very similar challenges as well. Like, we have a finite budget to work with as well. So I think it is very much about how you can, obviously, like, the key part of sustainability is make sure you're financially sustainable as well, because otherwise your business won't survive the next day. So I think what Samira said was very, very crucial. And like, we try to see, again, when we are doing these, we don't have unlimited budgets, so we have to take things one step at a time and slowly work with. I think we've had a lot of issues also with perception changes, because I think, we have, grown to now 13 properties, and we have some extremely good teams. And I think Ashan, who's here as well, is doing a lot of work to try and get in more of the policies, educate the staff. But there is definitely a little bit of further work that has to go into play. I think especially in terms of sourcing and the way we think about our sourcing, it's, I think that is one of the main challenges we have had when it comes to it. We are doing some good progress with working with more local suppliers, but sometimes when you do have a larger hotel, you need a bit of security in your suppliers, knowing that your vegetables are going to come every day, not for seasonality. And that's a challenge. But, in a lot of other countries, you do get inspired how you go to one restaurant in July and then you go again in December. It's a totally different menu which revolves around the seasonality of things. So I think that's something that we have to, start bringing into Sri Lanka, that thinking that, it's best to work with what we have around us, and, and see how we can work with that first and then go a bit further. And when I mean working locally, is not working with Sri Lankan products necessarily. It's working with really what's around maybe a 25 or 50 kilometer radius around you. So certain places that's possible, certain places that's not. So I think getting that mindset, especially, it takes a lot of time, because, you have to have certain quality and standards, and that is definitely a bit of a impact. I think, we have also worked quite well in terms of collaborating as well, because I think that's been a very important factor, and also, getting your inspiration from different places. And like, one interesting story, I think that, actually we got inspired a lot by the barn house, and after coming to the barn house we built our wooden chalets at Alia, getting inspired and using, I believe, the same, Ms. Ajit was behind that as well, to get inspired and reusing pallets to build the wooden chalets. So I think this is also a bit of a good story, because it comes full circle. I think it's the collaboration and getting, that awareness out there, and, not feeling like it's embarrassing to say that, we came here and got inspired and then did that there, is not necessarily a bad thing. I think it's not necessarily a bad thing, and it's very important. And this is really very much why actually we have this platform in place, so that we can really look at, pushing the message ahead and working with other, what we would sometimes call competitors. But in this space, I feel like we don't have to compete. We have to be inspired by each other, and I think that's also quite important. But I think coming back to the challenges, I think the main one is, of course, definitely sometimes financial when it comes to things. But I think we also have to also understand how to leverage a bit of the work we are doing, because I think more and more, I think it was a Booking.com report which says around 75% of travelers, I believe, try to choose a more sustainable option. So we also, I think, as as entities in the industry, we have to understand also how we can leverage what we are doing, but also do it in a genuine way, because I know greenwashing is definitely a bit of an issue, and, it's important to, and I think that's where I think Mr. Ratnayak and the great work they've been doing, working with SMEs and, getting us certified, making us understand that, sometimes sustainability is not just about replacing your water bottle with a plastic bottle with a glass bottle. There's a lot of scope, and it's a never-ending scope, which you can't say, yes, I'm sustainable, but I think that has been somewhat of a challenge also, how we can tell that story while still being authentic and, still being true to ourselves without greenwashing it as much. And I think that's another challenge that is definitely there in the industry. Some people probably are good at doing the work and not telling the story, and sometimes it's the other way around, and there are people who are good at both as well. And I think it's important to be good at both, because it's important, and now we all are businesses that are profit-minded at the end of the day, and we have to see how we can leverage that in a responsible manner as well. So I think that's also a key challenge that we sometimes face.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wickramasinghe. As you said, sustainability should follow inspiration rather than competition. So I would like to ask Mr. Ranawaka, are there any challenges you do foresee, and how do you think they should be overcome?
Okay, taking the role of a certification body in the supply chain, to me the challenge is because our role is to be the third party between the standards and the practitioners. So therefore, rather than emphasizing on the challenges we have, I would like to touch upon the both corners why the standards have come up. So there, I think it's a challenge we as a human race has at the moment, right? So environment is something we have been, as he said very correctly, the sustainability is something that we have been talking for a long time. Probably we haven't done that much of action, so it has to be spoken very loudly now. So anyhow, I think as a human race, we will overcome. But it is just that the way we used to live earlier and the way you have to live in our future could be a little different. So they are to bring it to a uniformity, because it is the environment, like even if you wanted to bring down, mitigate the climate change, personally there are things you can do, but collectively if you do our role, play our role correctly, only it will have an impact. So to do that, how do the masses can be driven towards one direction is by rules, regulations, standards. So that's how it goes. So I think more than taking a little more proactive approach than the governments, and the rules and regulations of the private sector also has come up, setting up standards which can be accepted and agreed across the borders of the countries, because sometimes the rules and regulation gets very confined to a territory. So the challenge there is basically how can the bigger challenge of us, that the environmental concerns can be mitigated. But on the other hand, as the Thema and the Barn House explained very well, how can these challenges can be bridged between into a business. So finally, I think sustainability is no more a luxury. So it is in real business. So, but more and more, it's true that any business has, the primary focus has to be profits. I think we should not shy to say that business is not charity. It has to be financially stable. First to take care of yourself, then of course the others. So to do that, it's fine. But the problem is, like, unless or until you understand the bigger problem, so that the bigger problem will bring in new challenges. So the business organizers, if they're not ready to gear up and cope up in those challenges in the business, probably there's no business case in the future. So if there's a new regulation comes up, probably if Dushant has to shut down this operation, so then, but he has to foresee what is it coming in. So therefore, I think talking about challenges on both sides, for practitioners, it's mainly to see what is coming up in our direction. So, and where the global is heading towards. So the foreign arrivals we are expecting here, when they are coming from different territories, probably they might demand to see the things that they see in their own territories also down here. And also on the other hand, coming down to Sri Lanka for the tourist or a traveler is, I think, the nature positivity is something that we have been always pitching ourselves. So always the smiling people plus the beautiful beaches, the tea gardens of our nature. So now just that we have to make sure that the travelers, that it stays. So it was there, it is now, but it stays in the future. So therefore, I think challenges for them. I know sustainability, changing always has a cost. So changing towards sustainability has a cost, but it doesn't mean always it's very expensive. So probably you have to rethink the way you see it. But I think the barn house, I see one example. So probably to have this set up definitely must have a different cost, but I think more than the cost, it was different thinking. And as you said, it's not a luxury, so people has to come here. Even now you sweat a bit, but if your course is fine, I think that is there. So therefore, from the travelers' point of view, they might demand more because we as human race has to get there. So therefore, that would be forced on them, whether they like it or not. So how in Sri Lanka, especially seeing as a green destination for a long time, how can we ensure and find our sweet corner in that arena to showcase the world that this is probably the best destination to come in. So therefore, for us, it would be our challenge is to understand the challenges of both ends. What is the biggest challenge, why the standards are coming up, and also to understand the practitioners' challenges, because otherwise then only you can make a very impartial judgment.
At the end of the day, it's the smallest steps that counts. So, are there any challenges you foresee, Mr. Dumiduheva? We would like to see this in your perspective as well.
Yeah, implementing the sustainable practices in Sri Lanka and demarcate or getting the Sri Lanka as a sustainable destination in the world. So there's many things we need to really address and change. So first thing is we need to address the greenwashing, right? It's like companies and also the personally. So the people claim we are very sustainable and we are practicing this and that. And also some people also just telling because I'm this kind of passionate person kind of things. So we need to really focus on that angle. So for the greenwashing, the organization, we have the third-party certification. Because someone really having the accreditations and also global recognition need to certify that organization really practicing the sustainability. So then there are internal and process and also the people awareness, the educations, everything they measure and also then certify them. Then only global customer will get satisfied on that and also build the credibility on that. So if we are not going on that path, the customer will come and they will disappoint. So what really people are talking about the sustainability and that kind of practices are there. But when the guests go in there, there's not such a practices and kind of implementation. So that is one thing. And another thing, mostly the awareness and also expertise. So when we're talking about the Indonesia and also the Turkey, so when they just start in the sustainability, they just develop their workforce, the expertise. So they build the trainers, they build the auditors, they build the consultants. So that's also need to be addressed in national level. Right? So then actually I need to mention that UNDP. So with that, we just started the development Sri Lankan expertise. So now we have GSSC trainers and also now we have the auditors and also the consultants who consult the companies who really need the help. Right? So when we see the certification, but there's a very less recognized or maybe the accredited certifications available in Sri Lanka. So that we need to find out what is the gap and how we really how we kind address for that. So then what is the area we need to focus on that. So then there's expertise and we need to link with the other foreign or maybe international organizations, get their expertise and they get their experience. And also some other destinations who have the good practices, how we can really adapt that and get their practices. And also in another way, in all the curriculums like universities, especially the tourism, so need to apply these contents, right? So the sustainability practices, certifications, how it's going to do and what is the global demand kind of thing. So then the new generation will get to know those things. So this is no more magics in sustainability. That is day-to-day life. So how we really implement and also how we measure it. So when even the carbon emission, the first thing is we need to measure it. So what is the direct emission, indirect and indirect, like 3 score. So then when we just started to measure it, so how it measures it clearly and how we just keep continue measuring it. So then if there's something goes wrong or something had not proper way, so how we get the corrective action to make it correct. So likewise we need to focus on that area. So then finally it's actually the collaboration. So who are really practicing in the country, maybe some other country. So especially we have the resources in our country. But thing is, the collaboration is very less. I'm not talking about only the private sector, how the government sector and international organizations. So how we really get together and collaboratively the drive Sri Lanka as a sustainable tourism destination is a matter. So then for that, really need to everyone be together and focusing in one direction.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dumiduheva, for your valuable insights. I would like to remind all our participants that there are going to be a Q&A session at the end of our panel discussion. So get ready with your burning issues, concerns. You can raise them at the end. So, Mr. Ratnayaka, could you also share your thoughts on the challenges Sri Lanka faces in this transition and suggest ways to overcome them?
Thank you, Asanga, asking me the challenges last. Why? Already the challenges are explained. My challenge is, or rather our challenge is, how do we help these stakeholders to meet their challenges and overcome or win over it. That's our responsibility. And in that, it's a big question to answer. That is our, the first challenge. Of course, we do understand our challenges with our stakeholders because in tourism, we all know, compared to any other industry, whether it's resource consumption, especially like energy, water, or any other resources, consumption level is much higher than ordinary person. Therefore, we have a high responsibility. And not only the panel sits here, everyone, those who have some concerns on sustainability or other the low carbon emission, we all know, like, we are talking about responsibility. The responsibility of the visitor, they understand more and more, so they look for opportunities to fulfill their responsibility personally. And also the organization who understand those responsibility, their responsibility, and also the guest need, so they get ready. And beyond than that, government also need to understand as a service sector or rather into the service sector, how would we find a way out to meet those challenges, in which actually the strategy very recently we have finalized. Not only the tourism organization, but interconnected organization, how we need to work together to facilitate all the stakeholders, especially the service providers in the tourism sector, is something we understand as a challenge, and also as a solution, a strategy very soon will be published. I think it will be good news to everyone in the industry. And not only the strategy, so we all know the tourism is an interdependent industry. For example, renewable energy. So energy we get it from other sources, and the source that they use to produce the energy, what it is, we know. And if those infrastructure supporting organizations are not adhere to what we wanted, probably a dependent industry like tourism will face a lot of challenges, which is a government challenge. And then again, transportation. When the public transport will use the renewable energy. It's a question not only I'm asking in front of this audience, but also asking from the main transport providers in the country, and there is a dialogue going on. And it's not easy, their mindset as well as their difficulties more than what we think. But of course, we don't stop, so we will carry on. Because finally, not only the infrastructure, next is to the private sector, the supply chain. And it is a matter to the certification organization also. When come to the certification, if the supplier is meeting the the required criteria, then the service provider be satisfied. So how we identify the suppliers, and also how do we the developed supplier, how do we link the supplier with the service providers is a question. So we are trying to address those challenges also in the future, so that it will be a better platform for the private sector. And also, like when initiate something like this, new resource allocation is very, very crucial, like in a sense challenging. And the government sector, I still remember when this initiative started, allocating on the first maybe 100,000, next is 100 million, was not easy. It was in 2017, very difficult. Like no one kind of thought of this is a futuristic need. But still, thanks to organizations like UNDP, who came forward and helped us on many ways to what we are today. And beyond than that, the USAID came forward and developed a framework to us. And Solidat organization came forward and developed a self-assessment system for us. ADB came forward and developing a sustainable destination plan for us. So likewise, a lot of resources from other sources have come forward, which is an appreciation. Beyond than that, private sector. So we have created a think tank where all the experts from the private sector came, including the two the panelists sits here, Vashan and Mr. Chintana, and also even Samira came and support us, sharing ideas. So even I still remember when we participate in an exhibition just to announce we are doing in sustainability. It was the Kushan and the team came and support us. So likewise, whether it's a the non-governmental organization and also the private sector came and support us, the government. So then the ball start rolling. Now, of course, with this new policy, as well as a lot of enthusiasm from various corners, now the little bit of resource is allocated, but then not sufficient. So getting sufficient resource for future to support the service provider is still a challenge. So then taking this message across to the industry is not an easy, where this kind of a program actually immensely will support with collective thoughts as well as people to listen and think about it, because a smaller crowd doing this will not help, but we need to bring it to the vast majority. We need to make it as a trend like in developed countries. And sometimes certain programs by rules and regulations cannot do it. We don't believe that sustainability can implement successfully by rules and regulations, but one might think it is necessary. But we think it is a volunteer. That's why I said it's a process of understanding responsibility and the fulfilling the responsibility. We are gathered here today to fulfill to a great extent on that also. And finally, how we give a kind of a incentive those who take the hardest step at the beginning. For any new work, those who are taking the first step, they need to be rewarded. So in that, how we do promotions for them to gain a financial benefit, because in private sector, whether it's a service provider, whether it's a certification organization, whoever, it's a private organization, they need to earn their money, first to meet their expenses, next to for their existence. So this we understand. So in that also the promotion in national level, sustainability as a concept, sustainability as a product, sustainability as our futuristic clients need or other our visitor to know about our destination is our challenge. So we are getting ready to face that challenge. Yet the resource allocation is not in our hand, but we are struggling at. Finally, incentivizing those who are taking the initiative is our major challenge, starting from financial incentives, whoever do the carbon, the emission minimization, how do we provide a financial facility, how do we maybe the taxes to reduce, to motivate them, and finally how we appreciate them or recognize them are the challenges. Even this morning we had the tourism award where we have included the sustainability category, which is part and parcel of what we are discussing today. So likewise, whichever the way the possible, we are trying to accommodate it. Likewise, I just mentioned the challenges from the top to bottom and also the various initiatives that we have taken. But we know that to fulfill the expectation of the private sector as well as the country objective or rather future objective, our understanding alone won't help. But collectively, not only the government sector but also with the private sector, joint hand taking some steps and also the showing results and let others to follow, and also win the journey and finally get the Sri Lanka positioning or rather global positioning as a sustainable destination with everyone's help is our objective, which is a big challenge we are facing for our future.
Thank you very much for your valuable insights, sir. As our panelists mentioned, sustainability is not something that can be achieved by only one person or a single organization. It's a collective effort. And also, it should not be talked and forgotten. It should be practiced and implemented in your day-to-day life. So we've heard valuable insights from our speakers, and now it's time to open the floor to your questions. Please feel free to ask anything that came to your mind during the discussion. For online participants, I would like to remind you can unmute your microphones or you can use the chat box to ask questions.
Hello, thank you again to the panel. My name is Shab. I run a food and agri sustainability company based out of Singapore called Smack.do. But we work with food, agri startups and boutique hospitality companies across the world. I have two questions around food procurement and wastage, generally for the panel, but especially to Maxime, because I just saw your beautiful 24-acre farm in Wild Glamping, Galoya. So in terms of procurement, I've seen organic take a huge leap forward in Sri Lanka for sure, but I'm curious about three specific things. One is permaculture, secondly, regenerative agriculture, and finally, syntropic agroforestry, and if there's any training or execution being done for this within Sri Lanka. And then secondly, in terms of wastage, what is being done regarding collection, separation, treatment, and reuse? Thank you.
Yeah, that's a wonderful question. I think firstly, there's definitely a lot of knowledge. Like even I won't pretend that I know the basic concepts of, permaculture and I think there's definitely has to be a bit more, there has to be like definitely a bit more knowledge impaired into it. I think, it's quite interesting. Like actually we're quite happy. I believe the land next to us at Glamping Gallo has actually been, taken over for a project where they're going to, I believe, do agroforestry or something of the sort, which is actually a wonderful news. Actually, we are also quite keen to understand and learn exactly from the concept. Yeah, I think, these concepts, I think really we have to really understand them and look at them. And also, I definitely think we need a bit of success stories and a bit of success stories that are promoted to see that, yes, is there a demand maybe from, will that lower yield, for example, or maybe not lower yield? Like, exactly, that's the questions that I feel like we really need to understand. So I think, honestly, I think from that, I believe I'm not well enough equipped to answer that. What I would say is just there definitely has to be a lot more education that goes into this, because, these concepts, like, when we are working sometimes with the guys who are doing our gardens and or looking after our vegetables, and I think, for us, sometimes we rely a lot on them and their expertise on it, because, we are not the experts in that sector. But I think there's definitely a lot of knowledge and training and a lot of things that can be done in that. And in terms of waste management, I think, it is quite a tough one, because, there are certain places, of course, one pillar is, of course, reducing the waste as much as possible. But, there's, especially when it comes to food waste, what we try to do is try and give it away to farms or, piggeries or different types of, organizations that can take it. Unfortunately, I believe, that type of food waste, usually you cannot give it to people because there are sanitary concerns with it. But in terms of other waste, it's definitely, we have different suppliers for different regions. Actually, in Pasikuda, we were actually trying to do a bit of a plastic collection site for the rest of the region as well, where we have collected a bit of bottles. And, it's just, sometimes we have very different challenges. For example, our property in the Knuckles, there is absolutely, I believe, no waste collection for a good 20-30 kilometers. So, what we have to do is sometimes, pack things up and then send them whenever we are going to Kandy. Or, unfortunately, there are certain things that unfortunately are disposed of in ways that we can definitely improve a bit on. So I think I would say most of the hotels, we do work on segregation and passing it out to collection agencies. But I think the problem is, if you're in a very remote location, you really do struggle. And, that is something that we are looking at, trying to maybe work, with create models like we're trialing in Pasikuda, that maybe, for example, our plastics might not be enough, but if we work around with the rest of our partners, the hotels, or even things like, beach cleanups, we sometimes do the beach cleanups, and if you give the plastic to the municipal council, it gets dumped. The dump site is it's quite close to where the Ode in Pasikuda in Oddamavadi, and from there, if it rains heavily, it can flow back straight in. So there are lots of issues like that, unfortunately, in terms of waste collection. We try and use as much as we can specialist providers that we know that will recycle that waste. But, especially the remoteness of locations like Knuckles and, the locations like that, it's definitely a big challenge to really, segregate. And when you segregate your waste, if it all just gets taken and put into one pit, then it's a bit of a problem. But, unfortunately, sometimes you do struggle to find the right financial way where it's the only way that would be possible would be you yourself transporting it to a certain place and then they're picking it up from there. Samira, do you have anything to...
I'm totally agree with Maxim on the... I'll talk about the reduction of food wastage, or segregation of waste. So we come across many challenges when it comes to garbage and reduction of wastage, especially when we design this concept showed by Ban. We thought of minimize the food wastage. So in that way, we since we are an event organization, most of the time we are serving buffets. So people would rather serve themselves a lot. And what we realized was rather than putting up in a serving dish, we go ahead with more action station where you reduce the wastage, like, the cooked food won't waste on that part. And so whenever there's a need, we're going to cook them and put them into the serving dish. So that way we'll reduce some. And then the rest would go to the farming, like the pig farms and all kind of thing. As Maxim said, like we can't work on the food banks or anything because of the sanitary regulations and the some of the issues that we have. And when it comes to the plastic and the glass recycling, what we have done in our design itself, if you see in the barn house, like, it was 90% made out of the material that are thrown away. So if you look into the chair that you have sitting in, it's made out of one-time use pallet wood. And if you see, look into the chandeliers that we have built here, it was used washing machine drums, or like, the oil filters from the vehicles. So there are many things that we try to give a life to the thrown away materials. And also there's another challenge, like, sometimes we try to reduce plastic usage, but when we realize, like, you go for glass bottles, but single-use glass bottles also are a huge impact. Like, there are no recyclable models in Sri Lanka to recycle those one-time use glass bottle. So fortunately, we have found a guy right now who gonna upcycle them to the glasses, like, drinking glasses and kind of thing. So we have that initiative to tie up with him to give those bottles away for him to create something else. So in that way, we will reduce the landfill of these things. So that's it.
No, as he was also talking about organic and the country's experience in organic, I know it's not directly on hospitality, but anyway, food is connected to hospitality. Since we have been the verification body in the country for a long time doing organic, I think there's a matured industry. So honestly, the customs doesn't have proper statistics what is organic is about, because we have general statistics, how much is coconut bringing in, how much is rubber bringing in, how much is other sectors bringing in. But when it comes to organic, since we don't have that specific HS codes, you don't find that statistics largely in the public domain. But we assume it is minimum 500 million a year to bring here. So actually, agri export is somewhere around 3.5 billion. Out of that, 500 million is actually quite a sizable amount, which itself shows there's a matured industry. But of course, when it comes down to the farm level, as Maxim said, the new concepts, new knowledge has to definitely flow in. But talking about today's topic, also the low carbon, I think now Chintan touched it upon a little bit now. When you assess your carbon, you assess it in your scopes. So your direct emissions, your indirect emissions. So we call it scope 1, 2, 3. 3 is about the supply chain, your like finally your emission caused by your supply chain, so upstream and downstream. There probably that is something we could also support with, where we have been in the food sector, we have been in the apparel sector, basically certifying their product as sustainable. So when you come to a hotel, so you have food, you have bed linen, you have mattresses. So finally for your entity to be called sustainable as a whole, so scope 3 also has to bring in. I think that is something we could also try to link up. The currently who are largely export oriented doesn't mean if there's a business case they looked into the local needs. So far it has been because the food companies, if you are looking at, they were largely looking at the export revenues. But as we see that now the hospitality sector is growing, and it is also trying to focus more and more towards sustainability, I believe these companies will also have room within the supply chain of hospitality as well. So for you to answer, actually it is, there's a lot to be learned, but I think there is still quite sizable amount of knowledge in the country as well.
All right. Are there any questions from the audience?
Thank you very much. I'm Supraja Subramaniam. Some of you all know me. I'm from Australia's Market Development Facility. My questions for the whole panel, actually. Mr. Upali, you mentioned that one of the sort of challenges in converting your operating strategy into sustainability for a lot of hospitality businesses, financial is one of those. Are there any other challenges? And if so, the second part of my question is, do you find that the decision to incorporate sustainability into operating practices is more enduring when it's demand-led, i.e. your customers ask for it, or when it's supply-led, as in your sort of business policy, the communities you operate in it demand that sort of thing? Yeah, it's a two-part question. Thanks.
Thank you for the question. Actually, when you look at whether it's the demand side or the supply side, I must tell you, like, if we work on one side, it is basically, I must say, like, not practical. So it need to go hand in hand. It need to support both sides, because as a country, we are an island country. We have limited resources. Of course, when come to tourism, we touched on mainly the sensitive resources. Tourism attraction is the key reason for people to come to the country. Then the two major resource bases are natural resources and cultural resources. Both are sensitive. Nowadays, the tourists want to see an experience, engagement, and also like kind of a story for you to carry back or other memory. So in that, the sensitive will have a more kind of a interaction impact. So in that, actually, how do we like manage it? So in that, I'm trying to emphasize both the customer need we need to consider, which is the trend. And on the other side, we got to be responsible. How do we protect our own resources? How do we keep our own identity and our kind of values and also like heritage? And then how do we go for? In sustainability, not only the enjoying in the current generation, but of course think about in the future. In that, carbon emission also support in today's context as a measurement, complying with it. So likewise, my answer is both supply side as well as the demand side need to take into consideration. The suppliers got to understand their own responsibility, while the consumer already shown their responsibility day by day. This consumer, the liking or other selection is growing. So both the things go hand in hand. So it will be a kind of a more conducive or other kind of a synergized situation in the future. Coming into the marketing side, actually, as I mentioned before, the resource allocation is not that sufficient. But of course, the external resources with some expertism we need to look for, and that factor need to come into play, because we are in the at the starting stage. There is certain number of private sector organization came forward, trusting us as well as the committing themselves to get the sustainability. For them to get a return, we got to have a very good marketing, which is not the traditional marketing, but the kind of in state of arts in the marketing techniques or the strategies need to adopted, maybe with the latest social media, or maybe various things utilized effectively, and also the big data collection and their analysis, and likewise there are many more things. We need some external resources as well. But of course, answering to directly your question, where the marketing to prove that those who have taken the hard decision, giving a reward, so which help them to continue with sustainability, with others to follow with sustainability, ultimately to make it a trend. We want a continuous marketing that need more resources.
All right. So are there any questions from the audience? Okay. Before we conclude today's session, there are two significant things to address. The first one is that this event has been organized with minimal carbon emissions. The Control Union of Sri Lanka has verified the carbon footprint of this event, which stands at 276 kilos. We are pleased to announce that Barnhouse and Thema Collection have offset these emissions successfully. So I would now like to invite Mr. Roshan Ranawaka, Managing Director of Control Union Sri Lanka, to present the certificates to Mr. Kushantha Hevapathirana, Founder and Group CEO of the Barnhouse Studio, Sherwood by the Barn, Junkyard by the Barn, Studio U Private Limited, and Mr. Maxim Vikramasinghe, Director of Marketing and Business Development at Thema Collection. Thank you all. Now we are about to witness the second major highlight of the day, the signing of the bilateral certification between Barnhouse and the Control Union, ensuring that this process will be followed at Barnhouse in the future as well. I'd like to once again invite Mr. Kushantha Hevapathirana and Mr. Roshan Ranawaka to this MOU signing, and all panelists, please join in this momentous occasion as they sign the MOU. And with that, we conclude the session of Thema Talks. A heartfelt thank you to our speakers for their valuable insights, and to our audience, both in person and online, for your active participation. We look forward to seeing you at our next session. For more details on our sustainable journey, visit our website at www.themacollection.com. Don't forget to stay connected and keep up with our latest sustainable initiatives by following Thema Collection on YouTube and LinkedIn, and Sustainability at Thema Collection on Instagram and Facebook. Until we meet again, stay connected and have a wonderful evening. Thank you.